So very happy to have you on the PCM4U channel here at ESMO, and I'm very happy to welcome Warnyta Minnaard, who is founder of the CUP patient advocacy at the level of the Netherlands and also the global level in Europe. So Warnyta, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to come into this activity?
Yes, yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to share our story. So yeah, I'm Warnyta Minnaard. I'm from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and about 5 years ago I had never heard of CUP. I was totally unaware, living my life as a normal 29-year-old, making plans for the future, and then my fiancé was sick, but we had no idea what he had, and it kept on dragging on, so to say. And then at some point they were certain it must have been cancer because they in the end found metastases in his brain, but they were not able to detect where it was coming from. And in that whole patient journey, which unfortunately ended that he passed away on the day that he finally got a first chemo. So it was 6 months of diagnostics, then a chemo, and then a few hours later he passed away. So that was really unfortunate and very hard. And then in that journey they mentioned CUP actually once on Christmas Eve. I still remember it, Christmas Eve 2018. They mentioned CUP, but they never mentioned it as a diagnosis. It was more like CUP, like it's unknown, but let's do more diagnostics. And he was 32 at the time, so they were like, you're technically a young man, fit, you know, now maybe first do a small chemo course first, and then we'll do more diagnostics, and then we know what it is, and then you get a targeted therapy, and you're young, so if anyone can take it, you should be able to take it. So we were kind of optimistic in that moment, and then he passed away, and then I was in complete shock, of course. And I was thinking back to the journey, so I spoke to his doctors and I was asking, so you mentioned CUP, so what is CUP? Is that something? And he was like, yeah, that's actually a diagnosis. And then I was like, oh, why didn't you then tell us that that was a real diagnosis? Because I started looking it up and I was like, oh, cancer of unknown primary, the outlooks are very grim. And actually a patient should get palliative support if they don't know what it is. And you cannot keep someone waiting for 6 months, because every day he kept on becoming more sick, but there was not really any help because it was not really a diagnosis. So I reached out to the National Cancer Registry. There I found out that at the time it was in the top 10 of most common metastatic cancers across the country, and that really made me actually angry, I think is the right word. So I was thinking, you know, this is apparently not a unique case. This is a normal case, unfortunately. So I started reaching out to a lot of stakeholders in health. I have a background in finance and healthcare, but more like on a policy level, health systems, but not in the Netherlands, actually in other countries. So I had a bit of a background, but I was thinking, now that I found this sort of big gap in the Netherlands, we have patients that are actually dying without any support, and it's actually not a unique situation. I need to do something about it. So I reached out to all kinds of oncology-related stakeholders, from charities, health insurers, hospitals, and they basically all said, yeah, this is a really sad group, patients all die, there's not much you can probably do. And I was thinking, no, you know, if I also then not do anything, like I'm sort of a grieving family member, I need to step up for these people that passed away, because I believe this is not really the normal way. And unfortunately people can die of cancer, but if they're without a primary tumor and not getting even palliative support, like how does our care system then function? It doesn't function for these people. So I started doing some research on molecular profiling, because I was thinking the diagnostics is clearly the bottleneck, because apparently you need a primary tumor and then you can get access to treatment, curative or palliative, but without that you don't even get access to treatment. So I started doing some research and I came across the WHITE study, a study performed in the Netherlands where they did sort of study impact of whole genome sequencing on finding primary tumors, as well as, you know, guiding molecularly guided therapies. So when I started doing that research, I was actually quite amazed. I was like, oh wow, actually there is an opportunity to find, with molecular diagnostics, find a primary tumor. So I reached out to the hospitals who were involved in this study, and they were like, yes, we did a study, but it's not reimbursed, so we don't know if we can still do it.
Okay. So thank you for this detailed description of the situation. So what is the current status right now in the Netherlands in terms of molecular profiling of CUP patients, and what are the future steps of your efforts?
Yeah, exactly. So I think once we realized the WHITE study showed really impact for CUP patient molecular profiling, we reached out to the politicians and we worked with them on getting the reimbursement done. Once that was in place, I think a key factor of the reimbursement code itself was where it was mentioned that whole genome sequencing for suspected CUP should be available for patients in the Netherlands in a center with a molecular tumor board. And that was really important for us because that means that only 8 hospitals, and you could debate whether 8 is already a lot in a country like the Netherlands, but 8 instead of hundreds plus hospitals can only do that profiling work for the CUP patients. So that means that patients have to be referred from their starting hospital center to those CUP centers, so to say. So I think one thing that was really key that Oncologists Scientific Association, the Pathologists Scientific Association, us as patient advocates, as well as the health insurance companies came together to write like sort of a diagnostic workup. So the guideline revision is ongoing now, but once the reimbursement was there, we needed like a step approach, like this diagnostic test in hospital, the first hospital, then this diagnostic test in a center with an MTB, so that you could also really like have like a flow of how the patient journey should be. I think so. We worked on that. That was launched in January 2022. So we're now already 1.5 years into that. The reimbursement code is also getting submitted for funding again next year, so we have another 3 years. And I think where we are now is that those 8 clinics with an MTB, they've all set up like a CUP clinic. Some of them call it more like a polyclinic, some of them is like an expert team. And the interesting part for us as patient advocates is that you see that certain hospitals are very much focused on like saying, okay, we have whole genome sequencing, what other tests could we do with these patients? Other hospitals are saying, oh, actually we're going to study more like the epidemiology of CUP patients, because for the first time possible, CUP patients are concentrated, and I think that is really the benefit of it as well. And what I think is also really worthwhile mentioning is that it's also key for these hospitals to start collecting data, because the sequencing is done by in the Netherlands mostly by the Hartwig Medical Foundation. They have a CUP algorithm as well, so they have a part of the data. Hospitals have data, health insurance companies have data, and we're now also in the phase that we need to sort of merge that data to also see what the outcomes are. And in terms of care for patients, I think very important is that in the Netherlands we have the drop trial. Without the drop trial, the sequencing result would not be, it would be beneficial to know where your tumor is from, but you don't have access to treatment. And with drop, you have access to treatment. And the beauty is that ever since the sequencing got reimbursed, there's an increase in CUP patients in drop. And I think that is really demonstrating the power of it, that by doing the sequencing, by getting that reimbursed and logistically organized, patients are now also getting access to treatment. And for me as an advocate, one of the next key things, and I hope the next few years we will actually study that, also see what are the long-term effects of patients that are treated in DRUP with a CUP, and to also compare that perhaps to other patients in DRUP without a CUP, to also see like what could be the difference. So the impact is really big actually on the different levels.
Yeah, clearly really impact, because sequencing technologies are clearly the path to in fact decrease the diagnosis of CUP, but increase the diagnosis of a tumor coming from an organ, even if it's not visible on CT scan. So you can in fact potentially decrease a lot of these patients that are with a non-primary. So it increases the number of patients that have access to standard treatments, but also treatment in clinical trial with targeted therapy, such as the drug trial. So do you have some ideas, or could you share with us how much patient to date that could be oriented to drug trials in the Netherlands thanks to this multi-step workflow approach?
So when we started out advocating for CUP patients, the National Cancer Registry mentioned roughly 1,500 CUP patients a year. But it is good to also understand that CUP, before any sequencing was available, CUP was also a frail patient that came to the ER and they saw it was metastatic cancer, but the patient unfortunately passed away before any testing could have been done. So the CUP numbers now are going to become more precise. What are actual CUP patients, or what are patients that should have maybe gotten a CT scan to figure out what cancer? So the guess by the specialist is that of those 1,500, roughly half of them you would actually see that they would be eligible for the whole genome sequencing because they are actual CUP patients and they survive long enough through the normal course of diagnostic workup. And so far, I think we are seeing that roughly 500 patients have been able to access it. But so far, what I understand, the result is that it's 65% of the patients, either the primary tumor is identified and the patient can get access to standard of care, or there's a treatment suggestion coming out of the DRUP trial. So that's actually quite already a large number. And I think it's too early to tell what the impact on long-over survival could be, but at least 65% of patients are getting a treatment advice.
Yeah, and that's clearly a very good results for a first step towards this effort.
There's actually a poster here at ESMO that talks about its impact, but that is only about the first 150 patients. But I know by now it's already more. But as of those first 150 patients, the papers are also published.
Yeah,
but it's an exciting time to sort of see what comes out of that. So.
Yeah, that's already a very strong analysis, I would say, to demonstrate that this effort works for other countries. So I know that you try to put this effort into other countries. So what are your perspectives, for example, in Belgium or in other countries, and what's the impact for the patients accessing molecular diagnosis and clinical trials?
I think I've heard sort of two answers to that. I think first, for me as a patient advocate, it's really a great learning experience to see how you can actually be that key stakeholder that can actually get the access to molecular diagnostics done, because everyone is talking about it. Each stakeholder believes testing should be done, but either it's too expensive or not possible. And I feel like as a patient advocate, you could be maybe that party that sort of brings stakeholders together and fights for reimbursement and be like the face of that fight. Because if the industry does it, it's too commercial. If doctors do it, it's not fair for the doctors in the peripheral center. So as patient advocate, you have a step in there. And I do think that can be replicated in other countries. And the good thing is that by the work that we've done in the Netherlands, sort of organizations in Belgium sort of they looked us up and they probably found us, and because a lot of information is of course in Dutch in the Flemish part of Belgium, they also figured that out. So they reached out to us whether we could also see if we could help perhaps also work with Belgium Cup patients to do something similar. And at the moment we're really much involved in helping set up like a way towards reimbursement. It's still very early, but I think that's really exciting for us to also help cross-border.
Yeah,
and
clearly. It's
also good to be involved in the Primrose project, because I see also drop. It should not only be in the Netherlands, it could be anywhere. But also I feel like we should inspire like the commercial companies, to participate and to see come together and work together in multiple countries to get this done.
So as there is a situation right now that we will change maybe, but there is kind of a country that is more advanced than another, there should be this effect of patient need to move to have proper molecular testing or access to clinical trials. So do you have some example of that, or do you have experience on that, and how do you recommend for this patient to do to access molecular testing and clinical trials?
I think I would support that, and at the moment we have not had any sort of requests from patients in other countries whether they could come to the Netherlands. I think the challenge, of course, is that each European country is a bit on its own. They have their own health system, and in the Netherlands you need to be a citizen of the Netherlands to be eligible for the Dutch basic care package that is available through insurance, and the CUP molecular testing is part of the basic care package. So once you are a citizen in the Netherlands, it's accessible to you, so there are no other restrictions. But I do think what you see is that in the border areas, and some of these academic centers are in the border areas, you see that they do collaborate with some of the German specialists, the Belgian specialists. So I think the knowledge sharing is there. But I think for a patient to actually move to the Netherlands, become a citizen in the Netherlands, and then get the testing done, that's probably too impossible in a diagnosis like CUP, because the timing is now.
So I understand your effort to try to diffuse, to put that in other countries better than maybe centralize it in a single country, clearly.
And for CUP specifically, we're launching here at ESMO the World CUP Alliance, an alliance of patient advocates all over the world focused on CUP, with the idea we should actually promote that whole setup, and should not only do it in one country, but see how we can actually get things done and moving in different countries as well. So I think it starts with knowledge sharing, and hopefully then the systems will follow.
So congratulations for all this work, all these efforts. Hopefully it will go to the objectives that we have right now. And thanks a lot for your time and your information sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm happy to be here, and it's always a pleasure to highlight cancer for non-primary, because I still meet people here, even here at ESMO, that don't know what CUP is. So we still have a long journey ahead of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.